Hi, do you know these two very simple mindfulness techniques that you can use to create more inner peace during your day or to rebalance your emotional and nervous system when you're not feeling so good? The first one is called Stop. Yeah, Stop. It was developed by a man called, I think he's a doctor, Dr. Jon Kabat Zinn, and he developed the stop technique to help people learn to regulate their moods a little better and to reduce stress. So the stop technique stands for stop. Take 3 deep breaths. Yeah. Observe how you're feeling physically and emotionally. Maybe ask yourself the question, am I okay? You might identify some basic needs that you hadn't been attending to, like maybe you're a little bit thirsty, you need a glass of water, maybe you need to stop and have a cup of tea because you've been on the go, and whatever other bodily needs you might have that you've forgotten to attend to due to being preoccupied. If you just notice that otherwise all is well and you're okay emotionally, then after attending to those physical needs, you can proceed with your day. So that can literally take not even more than half a minute, really, yeah? Or maybe about a minute. Just some breathing and some observing, right? The second technique is called RAIN, and it's the technique you move on to if you detect that you're not okay emotionally. So let me give you that acronym quickly, but before I'll just tell you that this technique came from, first of all, was developed by a woman named Michele McDonald, who is obviously a master of meditation techniques from the Vipassana Institute in Hawaii. And then the technique was adapted a little bit by another expert in meditation called Tara Brach, both wonderful people to find out more about. So the RAIN technique is recognize. So recognize I'm not okay, all right? Number one, recognize I'm not okay. Allow. So allow is to allow how we are actually feeling. And I'll come back to that. So allow how you're feeling. Feel the feelings, welcome them in, right? Rather than pushing them away. The next is investigate. So not only have I just acknowledged I'm feeling something, but I'm going to go deeper. I'm going to look at what the feelings are and where they show up in my body. So in tension and in my mind's eye, what am I visualizing? What am I seeing? When I see anger, where's it sitting in my body? Maybe it's here, yeah? Maybe I see it as a red ball. I don't know how I see it. What texture is it? What's it smell like? You can use your imagination to play with this, to allow your mind to sit in curious compassion, observing this feeling you're having, and rather than pushing it away, rejecting it, trying to do something to numb yourself, you look at the feeling, and you might be having multiple feelings. So one feeling might bob up, and as you're processing that one, another one might come up that allows you to, and they pass through you as you actually let yourself really, really feel them and acknowledge them, right? So that was the investigation process, right? And that can also involve thinking through or tracing back, when did I start to feel this way? Because it might not be obvious. It might not be that you've just had a fight with someone. It might be that actually, it might be that, you know, and when I say fight, I meant disagreement or argument. Hopefully not this, but anyway, you never know. But yes, if we're tracing back a feeling that originated, you've been carrying it with you for the day, but you're not sure where it's come from. Maybe someone said something to you earlier in the day that bothered you somehow. Maybe you saw something on the news, and it's just some kind of internal conflict or some tension you're carrying and worried about. This is your opportunity to investigate the feelings and the associated thoughts and beliefs that are coming together as a whole story, a story that you're telling yourself, okay? And when we're actually using mindfulness techniques, the whole point of mindfulness is to allow yourself to find that adult inner self, which is compassionate, kind, and curious, and empathetic, and to use that part of the self, like a lovely, warm, kind friend or parent, to observe the other part of the self that is struggling, right? And to be a compassionate observer of that self, a kind observer, rather than a cold, critical one, right? And so the next part of the RAIN technique, the final part, is nurture. I chose the word nurture because that's what Tara Brach uses, but I believe that Michele McDonald goes into a bit more detail on the N and doesn't so much use the term nurture. But just to keep things simple, I'm going to use the term nurture, because what that's about is deliberately taking steps to, now that you understand what's going on, to go and do some things for yourself that you would do if you were trying to soothe a friend or a little child who's upset, right? Do the same thing for yourself. Actively nurture yourself through a couple of things that you have thought of before, right? Before getting into this state of mind, to give yourself self-soothing, to nurture yourself. So it might be something as simple as giving yourself a little hug, right? Saying it's okay, it's going to be okay. I'm all right. I'm okay just as I am, right? I'm lovable just as I am. Those sorts of things. You take and you speak kindly to yourself. You touch something soft that soothes your skin. You might put on some moisturizer or a nice perfume, or and burn some lovely lavender oil. You might go and have a lovely cup of tea. You might call a friend just to talk it through and debrief a little bit. Just make sure whoever you call is someone who's going to be kind to you, right? So those are the two techniques, stop and RAIN. Don't hesitate to look up these different people who develop these techniques. Just bearing in mind, mindfulness is a meditation practice that can develop from being those little techniques there that we just used that are easier to remember. You can write them and put them on the wall somewhere to remind yourself to use them, and then it takes a while to get into the habit of integrating these into your day, but once you do it, it's quite a relief, right? I use them all the time. And after that, it's just important to remember that this has a cultural heritage, so cultural spiritual heritage. The names I've mentioned there are all Westerners. Excuse me, I've got a bit of a frog in my throat. They're all Westerners who have developed mindful techniques, adapted them from Eastern practices, right, to make them into more mainstreamized, secular Western practices. However, these techniques do have their origins in Eastern philosophical and spiritual practices. So I was about to say Tibetan, obviously the Tibetan monks, but any sort of Buddhist, Taoist heritage, or Hindu yogic as well, type of history. And these are thousands of years old, these mindfulness techniques that come out of these meditation disciplines. And there's so much to discover and learn about them that can really help us develop that inner peace that we want to then be able to emanate out into the world. Just remembering that self-compassion is not narcissism in the pathological sense. Self-compassion is this practice that we use not to go into some denial about ourselves, but in fact to sit in deep presence with ourselves, with all the feelings, instead of rejecting parts of ourselves we don't want to acknowledge. A narcissistic type of response to problems is to project, right? To disconnect from those parts of the self, and to create a false self, which is very, very heavily defended. And rather than processing feelings in a way where there's ownership of those feelings and there's a compassionate understanding of the self and truth-telling from a compassionate perspective about where those feelings have come from. In narcissism, people are incapable of doing that because there's too much shame within them that they find intolerable, and there's probably in reality some kind of alter ego self that is very, very critical of the self, that if they sit too long with and look too honestly at what's really going on inside and outside, they're confronted with the illusion that they've created within themselves about themselves, and that false sort of grandiose or perfect self that none of us are. No one's perfect. We all have little quirks and things we can work on. So just understanding that, very, very important. Self-compassion is not narcissism in a negative sense. Self-compassion is the opposite. It allows for you to have the self-honesty and the integrity to sit with and process those distressing moments and to say, yeah, I'm not proud of how I behaved. I'm feeling a bit of shame there. I think later I'm going to go and apologize to that person, whilst also at the same time holding that feeling of love towards the self, the imperfect self, the self that is in constant process of growth, right? That's what it's all about. All right, you take care. You all have a lovely day or evening, depending on when you're watching this. Peace and love to you all, and good luck practicing these techniques if you've never tried them before. And by all means, look up these 3 people I've been talking about. All right, bye for now from Bridie Nancy.